Chapter 4: The Ancient Tomb in the Mountains. Although it is Inner Mongolia, it is actually not far from Heilongjiang, and it is almost to the border of Outer Mongolia. The inhabitants are also mainly Han Chinese, with only a few Manchu and Mongolian ethnic groups. If you haven't been to the Gangang camp, you can never imagine how difficult that place is. There are a total of 6 of our educated youth, 4 men and 2 women. As soon as they arrive at the place, they are dumbfounded, surrounded by rolling mountains and endless primeval forests. Out of the Tunzi walk 100 miles and cannot see half a figure. There is no road at all, let alone electricity, and lighting an oil lamp is a cadre treatment, and making a flashlight in this place is equivalent to living in the presidential suite now. In the city, we couldn't imagine it at all, and we thought that all parts of the country were upstairs and downstairs, with electric lights and telephones. But at that time also felt fresh, never seen such a big mountain. A lot of things produced in the mountains are also the first time to eat. The mountains near here are richer, there are a lot of mountain goods. The river can also catch fish, but not worry about not having enough to eat. And then back to the city to hear them go to Shanxi to cut the queue said that they are really bitter. These years have not seen a grain of decent grain at all. The work of educated youths is not too heavy, because this place is close to the mountains and eats the mountains, and there are not many crops, so in the summer evenings, we take turns to go to the fields to see the crops, because we are afraid of being gnawed by wild beasts, so every night we have to have 1 or 2 people live in the fields of crops for the night. The crops in the mountains are not thousands of miles of green yarn tents like the North China Plain, but one in the east and one in the west. So I have to go out and walk around a lot at night, and this night I was catching up with the fat man, and the fat man was sleeping in the straw hut, and I went out for a walk, and I saw that there was nothing wrong, and I went back to sleep. When I was about to get to the hut, I saw a big white shadow not far from the hut. I rubbed my eyes and looked carefully. It was really not dazzling, but it was too dark to see what it was. I didn't believe in ghosts at that time. I thought it was some kind of animal, so I picked up a stick and wanted to drive it away. A white flower in the darkness, still shaking slightly. What is this? It doesn't look like an animal, but if it's not an animal, why does it move? It was so dark that I didn't have a kerosene lamp to make out what it was. Although I am not afraid of ghosts, but in the face of unknown things, there is always some fear of psychology. Do not dare to pick a stick to hit directly. The stick in my hand, in fact, is a thick branch picked up from the ground. I gently poked the pile of white things with the branch, very soft. Suddenly, in the darkness, I heard the fat man shouting, "Do? Who by? What are you doing with a twig stabbing me in the ass?" A false alarm. It turned out that the fat man ate unclean fruits during the day, had stomach trouble at night, squatted there to put thatch, and his big white ass was conspicuous in the night. The next morning, the fat man insisted on asking me to compensate him, claiming that I scared more than 1 million brain cells to death last night, and I said that with your brain, can you have so many brain cells? You and I are both poor and single, and I have received the supreme instructions to come to the countryside to receive the necessary re-education of the poor and middle peasants. What do you want me to compensate you? I can tell you in advance, as your close revolutionary comrade in arms, all my belongings are left as the last pair of pants I am wearing now, and you will never ask me to compensate you with these pants, right? The fat man said with a wicked smile on his face that it is not necessary. I saw a very large honeycomb in the old forest of TianXiaBaChang yesterday. You go with me to poke the honeycomb. Let's get some honey to flush and drink, and you can also use honey to exchange with the swallow and her father for rabbit meat to eat. Yanzi is a girl's name. Her father is a famous old hunter in the village. I and the fat man live in her family's Jiqing Point. Their father and daughter often go into the mountains to hunt, from time to time invite us to eat game. We have always felt that it is a little too much to eat other people's good things, but we are too poor, and there is nothing to use to invite Yanzi father and daughter. The fat man found a big honeycomb. We decided to get some honey back and give it to the swallow. Both of them are quick-tempered, just do what they say. In the city I and the fat man are famous naughty kings in the whole military region. Poking a honeycomb is nothing, 10 times more powerful than this is often played. I was afraid of getting lost, so I asked Yanzi to borrow his hunting dog, This is a half-old puppy. It was raised by Yanzi himself. Yanzi gave the puppy a name called Li Zihuang, and has not been willing to take it out to hunt. Seeing that we are going to Tuanshanzi to play, he lent us the dog. Tuanshanzi is not far from our village in a straight line, but because there is no road, it took half a day to go over the mountains and mountains. This forest is huge. The people in the village have warned us not to go in, saying that there are bears in it. We have seen a man with only half of his face in the village. When he was a child, he met a man-bear. Fortunately, Yanzi, her father, arrived in time, shot away the man-bear, and saved him. But the child's face was still licked by the human bear, and the man-bear's tongue was full of raw flesh thorns, and when he licked it, he licked off a large piece of flesh, and his left side of the face had no eyes and ears, and his nose and mouth were crooked. He is in his 40s, and he still can't get a wife, and the old people in the village will shed tears when they talk about him. Although we were bold, we did not dare to venture into the primeval forest, and the beehive that the fat man spoke of was found at the edge of the forest when he and the villagers came to collect pine seed oil, and the hive was in a big tree near a stream outside the forest. But unexpectedly, the honeycomb was so large that it was bigger than all the ones we had poked before, and from a distance it looked like a limp calf hanging from a tree, and the huge black stinging bees in it flew around with a deafening buzzing sound. I said, "Chubby, you fucking pit me, is this a honeycomb?" "This is simply a big hornet atomic bomb. This is going to be stabbed and exploded?" The fat man said, "Yes, if ordinary honeycombs still need to find you, I'll solve it myself. How about it? Do you still dare to do it?" I said, "What is this? Our team is invincible. We are not even afraid of US imperialist planes and tanks. Can we be afraid of a few little bees? It's all his grandmother's paper tigers. Fuck it. Let's eat honey today. That being said, you can't do it brutally, and the slightest mistake will be stung alive by a wasp. This kind of bee is so huge, it must be poisonous. You don't need more. You can take 1 or 2 hits like this." There happened to be a small river next to it, which called God Help Me, so I first took out a piece of cake and broke 2 pieces, fed the chestnut yellow to eat, and let it run away. Then they each put on the military coats they brought, put on a dogskin hat and tied a scarf around their necks, put on gloves, and covered the front of the hat with a transparent sand towel borrowed from the female intellectuals, and after checking that there was no skin and flesh exposed on the whole body, let the fat man find 2 hollow reeds, 1 for each person, and prepared to jump into the river to avoid the attack of the swarm to breathe later. When we were ready to stop, we came to the tree like 2 bloated bears, and I was ready to shoot with a ball of winter seed grass and matches, and the fat man took a long pole and counted. 1, 2, 3. When I counted to 3, I stabbed the part of the hive connected to the trunk with a long pole, and before I could stab it 4 or 5 times, the huge honeycomb horn clicked and fell under the tree, and the countless hornets inside immediately exploded and flew out, forming a large black mist in the sky, buzzing over our heads. I prepared well in advance. Regardless of the attack of the swarm, I lit the winter seed grass with a match, and placed it in the downwind outlet next to the honeycomb, and the giant bees flying out of it lost their sense of direction as soon as they smoked it, and flew everywhere, and the fat man and I used dirt to build a firewall around the burning dead grass to prevent the formation of a burning fire. At this time, the wasps that were not smoked had already recognized the target, and pounced on us. I felt the sound of the head like hail, and I didn't dare to stop any longer, so I hurriedly ran to the stream next to the fat man. The stream was not deep, only less than a meter deep. We were a fierce man to the bottom, and the wasps on the body were washed away by the stream. I held the dogskin hat on my head with one hand to prevent it from being washed away by the current, and the other hand took out the reed to breathe. After a long time, I showed my head, and found that the bee colony was either drowned in the water, or fainted by the smoke, and there was no danger. Although it was the height of summer, the stream in the mountains was cold, and my whole body was shivering with the water of the stream, and I finally climbed ashore, lying on the stone and panting, and the sun on my head warmed my whole body, and it was indescribably comfortable. After a while, the fat man couldn't hold it anymore, and crawled ashore slowly. Just halfway up, he suddenly sighed, raised his arm violently, and his hand was pierced by something, and the blood flowed. I hurried down to the stream to help him, and the fat man clutched the wound and said, "Be careful, there seems to be a broken bowl in this river, and it fucking stabbed me to death. There is no one living in this vicinity at all. How can there be a broken bowl?" I was curious, took off a clean light, dived into the stream bare-chested and groped. In the place where the fat man was pierced, I found out half a broken porcelain bowl. Look at the style of the bowl and the blue pattern. It is a bit like the blue and white porcelain of the Northern Song dynasty that my grandfather collected before. Grandfather's antique calligraphy and paintings were smashed by the Red Guards when they were broken, and I didn't expect to see the fragments of this kind of antiques in the deep mountains and old forests, which was really a bit intimate. But this thing was of little use to me, so I raised my hand and threw this half of the broken bowl far into the woods. The fat man also stripped off his soaked clothes, wrapped the wounds on his hands, and jumped into the stream, and the two of us took a bath, and then hung our clothes, shoes and socks on the pebbles by the stream one by one, and I whistled and beckoned Chestnut Yellow to come back. I saw Chestnut Yellow running back from a distance, and there was a fat gray hair in his mouth. I don't know how this unlucky rabbit did it, and it would hit Chestnut Yellow, a hunting dog that was still in the internship period. I saw a hare, and I was overjoyed to hold Chestnut Yellow and roll a few times on the ground. It was really a good dog. I broke a large piece of honey-stained hive from the hive to reward it. The fat man said, "Let's find someone to raise a few puppies when we go back, and we will have rabbit meat to eat every day in the future." I said, "You think beautifully, and no rabbit in the mountains can stop you from eating this big trough. Don't talk nonsense yet, I'm really a little hungry. You hurry up and pack up the rabbit, and I'll go collect firewood and make a fire." The fat man washed and skinned the rabbits by the stream, and I took bundles of dried pine branches and lit a bonfire, and smeared the skinned hares with a thick layer of honey, and set them up on the fire to roast. After a while, the smell of honey-roasted rabbit meat wafted through the air, and I cut off the rabbit head and fed it to the dogs, and the rest of the rabbit meat was split in half and eaten by the fat man. I've never eaten anything so fragrant when I've grown up, and I almost swallowed it with my fingers, and although there is no oil or salt to flavor it, the hare meat smeared with wild honey and roasted with pine branches has a natural flavor, and I would never have imagined such a delicious thing in the world in my life in the city. The life of educated youth is such a life of bitterness and joy. We were driven by the society to the remote mountainous areas, lost some things at the same time, but also gained some things that could not be obtained in the city. It seems that there are some things in life, I am afraid, that cannot be used and lost to measure. After eating, seeing that it was not early and the clothes were almost dry, they used thick branches to pierce a huge honeycomb, and the two of them lifted up one after the other, singing revolutionary songs and returning to the village. The sky and the earth are big. It is not as big as the determination of all of us, and the father and mother are not as good as the kindness of the Communist Party. This is really the sound of the whip and the golden kick, and the triumphant song is sung in unison. The only thing that is not harmonious is that our loud revolutionary song is mixed with the excited barking of Chestnut Huang's dog, which makes me feel a bit like the atmosphere of the devil entering the village in the movie. When I returned to the Tunzi, I saw that there were more than half of the people, so I asked Yenzi, "Yenzi, where have they all gone?" "While helping us carry the hive," the swallow replied. "The Chiganha River is flooded, and the wood in the forest farm is soaked, and most of the people in the village have gone there to help carry the wood at noon. I don't like to listen to people who don't let me get into trouble, as if I was born to be a troublemaker everywhere, so I said to Yenzi, 'The branch secretary is drunk and confused, right? What can we do? We are all good children of Chairman Mao.' The swallow smiled and said, 'You don't get into trouble, do you? After beating these young people in your city, the hens in the village made you make a fuss and stop laying eggs. The other two male intellectuals we were together also went to the forest farm. Only me and the fat man and the other two female intellectuals. We were not sent to work in the forest farm because we went out to play. I felt very lucky, and controlled the honey into the jar, which was full of more than 10 large clay pots, and the swallow said that the remaining beehive can also be eaten as a whole dish. And I will fry the beehive with roe deer meat for you at night. When it comes to eating fat people, I am happy, saying that our little life today is similar to the new year. I just ate roast rabbit meat in the afternoon, and I ate roe deer meat to fry the beehive in the evening. and my saliva flowed out. Swallow asks where we roast the rabbit? I told you what had happened. The swallow said, Oh, don't be foolish. Roast the hare on the edge of the old forest, and the smell of meat will lure the man and bear out. When we heard her say this, we remembered that it was really too dangerous. But fortunately the man-bear may have been sleeping today and did not smell the smell of barbecue. While helping the swallow to make a fire, I said that the fat man was pierced by a broken bowl in the stream. How could there be that kind of blue and white porcelain bowl in the Song dynasty in the barren mountains and mountains? Yenzi said that it was not new at all, and the girls in our village got married, and every family had a few bottles and jars for dowry, all of which were fished out of the river. The more I listened, the more strange I felt. Antiques could still be fished in the river? Yenzi also turned out 2 porcelain vases from under the bed for me to see. It's not the river long, it's all rushed down from the upstream. The source of these rivers near our village is in the Niuxing mountain of the Lama Ditch. I heard the old people say that the mountain is buried, and I don't know which Queen Mother's tomb of the Liao Kingdom of Jingwa. The good things that accompanied the burial of the old nose go. Many people want to find the tomb, but they don't find it, or they can't get out of the Lama Ditch. The forest of the Lama Ditch is old and dense. My father has seen the ditch. There are wild people haunted, and some people say that the Niuxing mountain is haunted. Anyway, no one dares to go again all these years. It was already night while talking. Yenzi had made the meal, and the fat man went to call 2 other female intellectuals to eat. But as soon as he went, he ran back with one of them named Wan Wan, and I was busy asking them what happened. Wan Wan gasped for a long time before she made it clear that the female intellectual, TianXiaBaChang, who was with her, wrote from her home, saying that her mother was hospitalized with asthma and was quite seriously ill. TianXiaBaChang heard that the bodhisattva fruit growing in the Lama Ditch has a miraculous effect on asthma. So he went to the Lama Ditch alone to pick the bodhisattva fruit, and went there in the morning, and he has not come back until it is dark. How high my brain jumps. This TianXiaBaChang is too reckless. That place is full of primeval forests. Even experienced hunters in the village don't dare to go casually. Why did she go alone? Wan Wan cried and said, I can't stop her. Let's go find her quickly. What if something happens? But now the laborers in the village have gone to the forest farm, and the rest of the people are old and young, and if you want to find someone, you can only go with me and the fat man. And Yenzi also brought chestnut yellow and shotguns with us, leaving Wan Wan to watch the crops in the village. If there is a dog in the mountains, we are not afraid of getting lost. We dare not delay. We lit a torch and led the chestnut Huang into the mountain overnight. There is no road to go in the deep mountains and old forests. I really don't understand how TianXiaBaChang herself, a girl, dares to break into the deepest part of the mountain alone. The fat man said that she may be in a hurry, whose mother is sick and not in a hurry. Because it was dark and the dog had to track the smell, Chestnut Huang had no professional tracking training, and often lost it, and had to turn back to find it again. So we walked very slowly, the road that used to be 4 or 5 hours. And after walking all night, the dawn appeared in the east, and the morning breeze in the great forest gave goosebumps to the people, and the fresh air lifted people's spirits, and the swallow pointed to us to the west. You see, that big mountain is Oxheart Mountain. The fat man and I looked west, in the mountains covered by the vast forest. There is a huge mountain with a strange appearance. The whole mountain is like the shape of a cow's heart. 9 white jade dragon-like waterfalls rush down from the mountain. The porcelain picked up by the villagers is rushed out of these waterfalls. It seems that the tomb of the legendary Queen Mother of Liao may be in the mountain, but no one has been able to find the entrance for so many years. When I saw this magnificent mountain, I suddenly had a feeling that I had assuring Chairman Mao that I had seen such a mountain somewhere. My mind moved, and finally remembered that I usually read the broken book left by my grandfather when I saw a record. This landscape pattern is an excellent feng shui treasure hole. The front is hopeful, the back has to rely on. The 9 waterfalls seem to be 9 dragons to take water. The hill is divided like a blooming lotus. By the way, it seems to be called 9 dragon covered jade lotus. Of the 9 waterfalls on the mountain, 1 more and 1 less, or there is no such large water flow. They are not enough to reach the pattern of the 9 dragons cover Yulian. 9 is the largest in the single digit, has the implicit meaning of the supreme. The pronunciation is also the same, has the meaning of eternity, and has always been regarded as the most auspicious number. In addition, if the flow of water in the waterfall is small, it is not called a dragon, it is a snake. This kind of feng shui treasure cave, there is also a separate name called Luo Xingyuan. According to the book, the most suitable is to bury women in this kind of place. If the man is buried, his family will be unlucky. At this time, I had a vague feeling in my heart that my grandfather's 16 characters in Yang Feng Shui's secret technique was not a mess of the four olds, and the content of the book was indeed substantial, and I would read it again after I went back. However, I don't think this kind of feng shui has any practical value. There have been so many emperors and generals in China since ancient times. Which one of them is just to find a place to bury after death? The change of dynasties, the historical torrent of prosperity and decline cannot be controlled by whether the ancestral grave is buried well or not. The swallow pointed to the valley in front of Niuxin Mountain and said, "This is the famous Lama Ditch, and legend has it that there are wild people in it, and it is haunted at night." The fat man looked at the primeval forest in the valley, frowned and said, "TianXiaBaChang will definitely get lost if she enters Lama Ditch. There are only 3 of us and a dog, and it is really not easy to find her." I saw that the 2 of them were a little discouraged, so I cheered them up and said, "Communist materialists should not believe that there are any ghosts in the world, whether they are ghosts or wild people. Even if they are unlucky, if I meet them, I will capture a few of them alive and take them to Beijing to give them to Chairman Mao. Chairman Mao must be very surprised when he sees them." The fat man, like me, is from a military family, and there is a natural element in his blood that he is not afraid of heaven and earth. Only Yanzi is worried. As a local, she has heard countless terrible legends about this Lama Ditch since she was a child, and naturally has a congenital fear psychology. But now it's important to save people, and you can only leave those behind. The 3 of them sat down first and ate some dry food, and the whole equipment. We had a total of 2 shotguns. These 2 guns were used by Yanzi and her father when hunting. One was 3 sleeves, and the other was a commonly used pole by the Orokan people, both of which were very backward. All of them were breech-loading gunpowder guns, which were very lethal at close range. But it was difficult to guarantee the power and accuracy of shooting at targets 35 meters away, and it was good to shoot a hare-roe deer or something like that. I was taken to the shooting range by my father to play with guns since I was 6 years old, and I am very familiar with the long and short guns of the People's Liberation Army. But this kind of breech flintlock shotgun, I am not sure that I can control it at all. The fat man and I have similar experience. We discussed. The shotgun I and the swallow each took one, and the fat man took a machete for chopping wood. Ready to stop, the 3 of them plunged headlong into the dense forest of Lama Ditch. In the Lama Ditch, compared with the legendary wild man and mountain ghost, the most real and direct threat comes from the man-bear. Although the man-bear and the black blind man are the same bears, but the man-bear likes to walk upright, hence the name. The man-bear is large and the skin is thick, and the hunters only dare to attack the man-bear when they are in groups and have a large number of hunting dogs. If a person encounters a man and a bear in the primeval forest with a broken gun, it is almost equivalent to a death sentence. After walking in the forest for most of the day, the sound of the water of the 9 waterfalls on Niuxin Mountain rumbled louder and louder, and I saw that the Lama Ditch had come to an end, and I was almost at the foot of Niuxin Mountain. The man, bear, and savage didn't touch it, let alone see TianXiaBaChang, and the fat man was so tired that he sat on the ground. "No. Really. I can't walk anymore." Yanzi said, "Then let's rest for a while. Chestnut Yellow doesn't seem to be able to find TianXiaBaChang's smell. Alas, what's the matter? If I can't find her, the branch secretary and my father will not be able to scold me to death when they come back." I was also tired enough, so I picked up the kettle and poured a few sips, and said to the 2 of them, "TianXiaBaChang Su is not going to let people eat bears. Otherwise, it is possible that she was captured by the savages and became the lady of the village." We were resting and chattering when we heard Chestnut Yellow barking at the depths of the forest. The hounds are good dogs with good bloodlines, and they would never bark so wildly unless they were in extremely dangerous situations. I asked Swallow, What's wrong with the dog? Did you find any beasts? The swallow's face turned pale. Hurry up the tree, it's a man-bear. As soon as I heard that it was a man-bear, I hurriedly climbed up a big tree 3 times and 2 times, and looked down to see that the swallow was holding the fat man's buttocks, and the fat man couldn't climb the tree, so he struggled to hold the trunk and rub it up little by little. I quickly slipped down from the tree again, and together with the swallow I held the fat man's ass, and the fat man finally climbed up to the lowest big fork, and lay on it sweating profusely and said, This tree fuck. It's too high. The cry of the chestnut yellow became more and more urgent, and before the swallow and I could climb the tree, we saw a black-haired man-bear emerge from the bushes, and when it saw a living person, it immediately became excited, and the man stood and roared like thunder. Yenzi has been hunting in the mountains with her father for many years, and she has extremely rich experience, so she didn't have time to think about it. So she raised her shotgun and fired a shot at the man-bear, and there was a thud of fire, and the projectile hit the man-bear's stomach. Due to the close proximity and the softest belly of the man-bear, the shot opened a large hole in its stomach, and blood and intestines flowed out at the same time. The man-bear was injured and angry, and stuffed his intestines back with the bear's paws, and then pounced furiously on the swallow. The swallow's shotgun could not be fired continuously, and there were trees and thorns behind him, and there was nowhere to escape, so he could only close his eyes and wait for death. Saving people is important. I don't think much about it. Hurriedly raised the gun to aim at the head of the bear. If this shot misses, the swallow will be over. Thinking of this, the hand is a little trembling, a gritted tooth to pull the machine, boom. The huge recoil of the shotgun almost lifted my head, but sat on the ground. I don't know whether the musket is not lethal enough or I shot off, although it hit the head of the bear, but only blinded one of its eyes. Although this shot was not fatal, it saved the swallow, and the man and bear were blind in one eye, and his face was covered with blood, and there was still half an eyeball hanging on his eye socket, and he became even more crazy, and left the swallow alone, and pounced on me. At this time, Chestnut Huang bit the hind legs of the man-bear from behind, and the man-bear turned his head to grab the chestnut yellow, and the chestnut yellow was very alert, and when he saw the man-bear turn around, he ran away and bared his teeth at the man-bear to provoke. Just like that, Swallow and I both seized the time-saving 10 seconds and climbed the big tree respectively. The man-bear was not lightly injured. His stomach and intestines were pierced, and a large section of it flowed out, and he was blind in one eye, and even the tiger was afraid of it in the mountains, and he had suffered such a big loss, and wanted to catch the chestnut yellow, but he didn't have a hound to run fast, and he wanted to bite the 3 people, and those guys climbed the big tree again. After a few turns under the tree, although there was an evil fire in his belly, he didn't know what to do for a while. He jumped like thunder, roared wildly in the sky, and shook the valley. I lay on the big tree and saw the people and bears below so anxious that I turned in a circle. Forgetting that I was in a limited situation, I felt funny, and shouted to the fat man on another tree. Little fatty, why don't you leave your second uncle? What are you wandering around? You persuade it, don't think about it. The fat man is not afraid of people and bears but afraid of heights. In modern terms, he may be a little afraid of heights, lying on the fork of the tree and trembling in fright, but he listened to me squeeze him, and refused to suffer, and scolded me. Bai, you are fucking lacking in virtue, you. Who is my second uncle below? You can see it clearly, isn't that your daughter-in-law? I laughed, pointed to the man below and said to the fat man, Oh, I'm wrong, it turns out that this is your aunt. I won't be your uncle. The fat man was so angry that he wanted to throw me with the pine cones on the tree, but he held the branch tightly with both hands, for fear that he would fall down as soon as he let go, so he didn't dare to make too much movement, so he could only stare at me. I was even amused when I saw the fat man, but immediately my smile froze, and the man and bear under the tree were desperately climbing the big tree I was on. Although it is bulky, but the strength is great, and it has been seriously injured, the pain has made it completely lose its mind. In its eyes only the 3 of us are a dog, staring at a blood-red bear eyes. The flesh thorns on the big bear's paws firmly grasp the trunk of the tree, and the huge body climbs up more than a meter high every time. I scolded in my heart. Who the hell told me that bears can't climb trees? Isn't that a pit for me? There is an old hunter in the mountains who tells young hunters, it is better to fight a tiger than a mad bear. The human bear, who was completely crazy because of the injury, was so destructive and explosive that I was shocked. Where did I still have the heart to joke with the fat man? And I kept thinking about how to get out. At this time, the swallow reminded me, hurry up. Load up the iron sand and hit its other eye. Then I remembered the shotgun I carried behind me, scolded myself for being useless, climbed to the top of the tree for a while, untied the arm belt from my trousers, fastened the arm belt to a large branch large enough to bear my weight, grabbed the shotgun with one hand and hung the center of gravity, and freed the other hand to fill the shotgun with gunpowder. And I loaded most of the remaining gunpowder from the horn barrel into the barrel of the tooth-lifting gun. The man-bear crawled very fast, getting closer and closer to me, and both the swallow and the fat man pinched a cold sweat for me. I tried to focus only on the action of loading the shotgun in my hand, and not on the man-bear crawling up below. After loading the gunpowder, it is pressed iron sand, and the gunpowder and iron sand are pestled hard with an iron tongzi. My nose and sideburns are all sweat. This kind of shotgun is really troublesome, and the broken gun is really fatal. In the big forest in the northeast, how many hunters have lost their precious lives because they don't have a fast gun? At this time, if I can have a 5.6 semi-automatic rifle, even if it comes to 2 or 3 more people and bears, in this case, even if there is a pistol. At the moment when I finished loading the iron sand gunpowder and replacing the velvet flint, the man-bear's claws had reached my feet, so I quickly shrank my foot, turned the muzzle of the gun downward, and fired a shot at the man-bear's head. The musket is to rely on the power of gunpowder jet to stimulate the iron sand, but the angle is too low to make the iron sand pressed in the barrel loose, did not exert its due power. In addition, because it is a one-handed close shot, there is no support point behind, so close to the distance or missed, did not hit its head, just hit the shoulder of the man-bear, flesh blurred. The man-bear fell from a tree more than 10 meters high, heavy smashing on the ground. The ground is extremely deep. Dead branches and leaves, plus its skin and flesh are thick. Falling from a height did not cause much damage to it. The man-bear climbed up, this time no longer climbing the tree, like a heavy tank, screaming and slamming its fat body into the tree, shaking the pine leaves and pine cones on the tree rained down one after another. Fortunately, I hung my arms with an arm belt, so as not to be shaken. I was a little worried that this big tree was not strong enough, and it would break off after a few hits by people and bears, and I didn't think that today I was going to die in the deep mountains and old forests, and I couldn't lose face when I died, so I had to show some righteous and awe-inspiring strength of revolutionaries, so that the fat man swallow could take a good look at my old who is by no means a bad seed. So he tore his throat and shouted to the swallow and the fat man, "It seems that I am going to see Marx. I can't help my comrades in arms. I will go first and take a seat for you over there. If you have anything to say to the revolutionary mentor, I will definitely convey it for you." The fat man shouted to me on another big tree more than 10 meters away, "Comrade Lao Hu, you can go with confidence. The revolutionary cause has not many of you. You go to Lao Ma's side to study revolutionary theory. I heard that they always eat potato and beef stew. Do you have a habit of eating?" I replied, "When did we do revolutionaries?" "Comrade Chubby, if the revolutionary card doesn't fall, you just push forward, the red flag rolls over the serf halberd, the black hand hangs the whip of the hegemon, and the remaining 2/3 of the suffering masses in the world will depend on you to liberate. So I will eat potatoes and roast beef every day." Yenzi was so anxious that she cried, "What time is this? You two still have the leisure to talk about calves. Hurry up and think of a way." Just when we had nothing to do, the man-bear stopped hitting the tree with its body, stopped, and sat on the ground panting. It turned out that the man-bear shed a lot of blood, and kept tossing. Although its brute strength was amazing, there were times when it was exhausted. This time it calmed down from the rage, learned to be obedient, waited for work, sat under the tree and consumed with us. Chestnut Huang also saw the power of the man-bear, did not dare to get close to the man-bear and bite, squatted far away. It was also very hungry, but out of loyalty to the master, he refused to find food by himself. Yanzi felt sorry for his dog, and whistled to let Chestnut Huang go find something to eat by himself, and Chestnut Huang left. The three of them lay on the tree to discuss countermeasures, but after thinking about it, there was really no feasible way, and now they went down the tree and fought hard. With the old-fashioned musket in their hands, they undoubtedly killed themselves. Most of the people in the village were not there, and they didn't want to expect someone to come to the rescue. In order not to fall off the tree, they had to tie their bodies firmly to the trunk of the tree with their trouser belts, and see who could beat who in the end. In this way, a stalemate was formed, and this situation was the most unfavorable for the three people in the tree, and the thrilling man-bear struggle just now had exhausted most of our strength, and now it was almost night, and the three of us had not closed our eyes for 2 days and 1 night, and had only eaten a few stick pastries during the day, and we were hungry and sleepy. And I was afraid that we would not be able to pass out of hunger and fall off the tree until tomorrow morning. This situation reminds me of a poem by the chairman. The enemy army is besieged by thousands of people, and I will not move. However, there are no flags in sight at the foot of the mountain, only people and bears waiting. I was so cranky, and before I knew it, I fell asleep on the trunk of a tree, and I don't know how long it took to feel hungry in my stomach, and I woke up with a burst of pain, only to see the sky full of stars, the waning moon like a hook, and it was late at night. The whole forest was silent, and by the moonlight, the man and bear under the trees were gone, and I don't know when it left. The branches were so thick that I couldn't see clearly whether the swallow and the fat man were still in the tree, so I let go of my throat and shouted, "Swallow! Chubby! Are you still in the trees?" Asked several times, shouts echoed through the valley in the middle of the night, but the two of them did not respond. I was bold, but the thought of being alone in the primeval forest made me shudder. I thought that these two guys were too uninteresting. Why did they forget me? And they didn't even call me when they left. I shouted twice more in the tree, but there was no movement. I became restless and looked around, and found a place not far ahead of me where the lights were flickering, and I didn't expect that there would be people living in such a place. Did the two of them also see the light and go over there to find someone? In the dark night, I couldn't distinguish the southeast and northwest, only listened to the roar of the water, raised my head to find the direction of the North Star. It seems that the light should come from the direction of Niuxing Mountain. I slipped down from the tree, and walked towards the light with a deep foot and a shallow foot. I began to fantasize that the owner of the light was an old hunter who lived in the mountains, with a white beard, very kind, warm and hospitable, and that when he saw such an intellectual youth like me, who had lost his way in the forest, he would have made me a cup of hot tea and roasted a deer leg for me to eat. The more I thought about it, the hungrier I became, so I wiped the saliva from the corner of my mouth with my sleeve. While trying to eat, I walked and soon came to a huge cave. The lights in the depths of the cave were brilliant, very strange. Just now I looked at those lights not far away, but now it became in the depths of the cave. I was so hungry that I was dazzled. Driven by the great temptation of roasting venison in my fantasy, I walked into the cave, and walked in 3 steps to the end of the dark and long cave, and found that the space in the belly of the mountain was vast, which made people suddenly open up, and suddenly saw on the opposite side that 5 or 6 years ago girls were talking and laughing side by side, and now it was clearly summer, but they were dressed in luxurious furs. And the style was classical, and it did not seem to be the clothes of today. Only one of them was wearing a seasonal blue hijab costume, and she had 2 braids on her head, and a tattoo on her shoulder. "Serve the people," with the words, "Army green canvas shoulder bag." Hey, isn't that TianXiaBaChang? That's right, it's definitely TianXiaBaChang. She is an educated youth from Suzhou, and the fat man and I are from Fujian, so we all say that we are Southerners, but we are not too familiar with each other. Mainly because I am too naughty with the fat man, we always get into trouble, and the ordinary honest and quiet girls don't dare to get close to the two of us. However, when I saw an acquaintance in this strange cave, I had more or less a bottom in my heart. I took 2 steps and shouted to TianXiaBaChang. "Xiao Tian, why did you come here? Is there something to eat?" TianXiaBaChang turned her head to see that it was me, so she beckoned to me and motioned for me to come closer. I went over to her and said, "You're having a good time here. We almost let the bears eat you just to find you. What kind of place is this? Do you have anything to eat? I'm so hungry that my heart is on my back." TianXiaBaChang said, "I'm so sorry, it's all my fault. I went into the llama ditch to collect medicine and got lost, and was saved by these kind-hearted sisters. They will play shadow puppets for a while. You came just in time. Let's watch it together and then go back." Then she introduced me to some young women beside her, who spoke with a local accent and spoke politely, and brought me some venison jerky to eat, and beckoned me to go to the play with her. I followed them inside, and saw a city in the middle of the vast cave, with magnificent pavilions and bright lights, and all kinds of antiques and jade piled up all around. In front of the city gate, a paper lamp and white cloth were set up, and there were more than a dozen musicians who were in charge of gongs, drums, and swona in the back, and there was an antique long table in front of them, and the tea utensils and teacups on the table were all very exquisite, and there was a large red agate tray full of melons and fruits. There are 3 chairs in front of the table, and the women in mink furs before invited me and TianXiaBaChang to be on the left and right, and the chairs in the center are fictitious, and it seems that there is still an important person coming. TianXiaBaChang saw that there were only 3 seats, and the rest of the people were standing behind, so she felt a little reluctant and wanted to excuse herself. "I'm tired and hungry, and I can't care about being polite. Anyway, the people of the country and the people are sitting, since there is a seat, who sits differently, so I sit with a big grin, grab the food in front of me and eat. It may be that I am very hungry, although the food is exquisite, but it does not taste like half of it. It is like chewing wax, and after eating a few bites, the more I think about it, the more strange I feel." At this moment, 2 young girls walked out of the gate with an old lady in rich white hair, and sat down in the central seat. TianXiaBaChang and I both stood up to say hello to the master, and when I saw the old lady's appearance, I felt even more weird in my heart. What years are these now? How can there still be a landlord's wife? The old lady nodded at the 2 of us, sat down in the middle, and waited without saying a word to watch the play. Shadow puppetry originated in the Han and Tang dynasties, also known as lantern shadow play, is a very popular art in the folk, carved out of the characters and animals in the play with donkey skin, and is manipulated by the artist behind the white curtain with the ideas of gongs, drums and instrumental music, and has developed to a complete set of plays that have no less than hundreds of plays in recent years. However, this art form was naturally affected during the Cultural Revolution, and was criticized as a poisonous weed that promoted talented and beautiful people, emperors and generals, and where would anyone dare to interpret it again? I never imagined that I would be able to see it here today, and this kind of performance was so fascinating in an era when there was zero cultural life, and I patronized the play and completely forgot about other things. The shadow puppet plays are all very wonderful plays. First performed a play, Taizong sleepwalks in Guanghan Palace, and then began to play Diqing Night captures Kunlun Pass. The swords and swords on the stage, the soldiers coming and going, were wonderful, and the drum music was urging, which made the audience cheer continuously. I saw that my heart was shaking, and my mouth was thirsty, so I reached out to take the teacup on the table and drank water, and inadvertently looked at the old lady beside me, only to see that she was also smiling at herself, and while looking at it, she took the preserved fruit snacks on the table and ate them, and the appearance of chewing food was very strange, and her cheeks were agitated like an old ape, one by one. My grandmother has no teeth when she is old, but eating is never like this. Is this old lady a human or a monkey? In a mess, the teacup in her hand fell to the ground and shattered. It didn't matter if the teacup broke. The old lady's head also fell to the ground, and her head was still staring at the shadow puppet show, chewing endlessly. The old lady's maid hurried to the front, respectfully picked up her head, and pressed her to her body. I knew in my heart that I had met a ghost, so I pulled TianXiaBaChang up and ran outside the cave. Stumbling out of the cave in the dark, I heard a loud bang in my ears. The earth kept shaking, and the cave behind me closed into a huge stone wall. If I came out half a minute late, I would inevitably be caught alive in the mountain wall. It was already bright outside. I pulled TianXiaBaChang and ran to the stream below the mountain, and suddenly felt a strange pain in my stomach, so painful that cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I couldn't help but squat down. It seems that there is a problem with what they gave me to eat. I remember listening to my grandfather tell the story of ghosts inviting people to eat. Ghosts and monsters use stones, frogs, maggots to deceive people to eat. I don't know what kind of ghost bird I just ate. The more I think about it, the more disgusting I am. I can't help but vomit. In the pain, I vaguely saw two people walking in front of me. The girl in front of me was a little familiar. It turned out to be a swallow. I felt relieved when I saw her, and fainted in front of me. By the time I woke up, it was 3 days later, and the swallow and the fat man had been in the tree until dawn, and the man and bear under the tree had died of blood loss. It's just that I couldn't be found anywhere, and finally I was found unconscious in TianXiaBaChang by the river. I have been in a coma for the past 3 days, with a high fever of more than 40 degrees. The fat man ran 110 miles of mountain roads to invite the county doctor to treat me. I am in good health, and finally woke up, and TianXiaBaChang has never been conscious. So I had to notify her relatives to take her home for treatment. As for what happened to her, we don't know very well. I told my father about my experience. He told me that I encountered a ghost market, also known as ghost show. There is a legend in the mountain. When the Queen Mother died, buried alive a lot of folk juggling artists for burial. In the past, some people have seen the same thing as me in Yoshing Mountain. But these things are vague in my memory, and sometimes I am not sure that they have ever happened. My life as a young person has only passed for more than half a year, which is not very long, but the memories left behind will never be erased, and it was my turn to go home to visit relatives during the spring festival in '69, and my fate took a huge turn.